hosted by a master of the game.
Yes, Royal Blackness, KKD,
the finest.
Catch Master of the Game on CTV. Oh yes, nuggets of inspiration and delightful treats for your enjoyment. Whether you love power, money, beauty or fame, there is so much to learn from a Master of the Game. Only in the place to be. The coolest channel, CTV. About on CTV, Ghana's #1. I'm streaming live on Facebook at MyCTVGH and piping on Class 91.3 FM. We're also streaming live on YouTube at MyCTVGH. Good morning. My name is Darkwah, Kwasi Kyei Darkwah, and I am delighted to be united with you wherever you are in the world and wherever you're watching us from. Today, I have a brainiac with me, Mensa level brainiac. Since Harvard University, one of the greatest institutions of learning worldwide, was established in the year 1637, he is the only African, other than Desmond Tutu, who has served on the governing board of overseers. He's a Ghanaian, he's a smart young man, he's a brilliant leader who could possibly become the president of your beloved motherland Ghana in the near future. And he's also the CEO of CarePoint, a tech-forward healthcare company which operates in 4 different African countries. Currently, he's also the chairman of the board of one of the greatest schools in Africa, Ashesi University. Please welcome Dr. Sangu Delle.
Thank you. Happy New Year and good morning.
Happy New Year to you and good morning to you. I'm upset I didn't wear my fugu this morning.
I'll get you one specially made from Nandom.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
I love this.
Thank you.
The colors are resplendent. I love this. So that's blue and gold. Royal blue and actually
exactly.
soft gold. Royal blue.
Yes.
Royalty.
Yes. I'm the Malu now of Nandom.
Oh, interesting.
So I always like to celebrate our culture. I like to, most of the time, it's very rare that you'll find me in Western clothes.
Interesting.
I love African clothes. I love our designers, and I love to showcase the beauty of our culture.
Fantastic, as we should do on special ceremonies and nearly every day of our lives.
Yes.
Let me ask you though, you have a hero of mine who raised you. How is Dr. Edmond Delle?
He's doing well. Now Prof is doing fantastic. He turns 82 this year.
Interesting. My dad is 86 now.
That's amazing. And this man still works every day. Okay, his work ethic and his dedication is really unmatched, and it's inspired me. He wakes up at 4 a.m. every day.
Still.
He studies in the morning. He goes to mass every single morning, 6:30 at Christ the King. And so I've started that also. I go every morning. And then from there, he'll go and see patients until about 2-3 p.m.
Even at 82?
Even at 82. And then he gets home. He's now the paramount king of Nandom. So he'll get home around 3, and then he'll do palace duties.
Cultural duties, of course.
And then in the evening, every single day, he goes for an hour walk.
Wow.
So
that's after dinner?
Yes. So, he always jokes with us. The other time he had his physical, he came home and he says, "Oh, my children, you're not lucky." I said, "Why?" He said that the doctors say I will live for another 20 years. So the property is there, forget.
Oh, Dr.
No,
Delle.
but thank you for asking. He's doing very well.
He's one of my Ghanaian heroes.
Oh,
Great
thank
man.
you. He's doing fantastic.
And thank you for calling me so I could speak with him the other day.
Yes,
and
he really enjoyed
I could
that.
see how happy he was when we spoke.
Yes, yes, indeed.
It's good for us to honor our elders.
Indeed. And we don't do enough of that, and we don't do enough of capturing their stories.
Yeah. Right. And I've spoken to him about possibly coming home to interview him because I cannot see dragging him into the studio.
Yes.
Yes. So let's talk about the younger Dr. Delle. Brilliant chap who wrote his first letter to Harvard University at what age?
I was 5.
5 years old?
Yes.
What caused you to write that letter?
So, I was a very unusual child. I learned how to read when I was 2. And I've now recognized that I was neurodivergent. So my brain just operated very differently. And so my father at the time had founded the African Commission on Health and Human Rights Promoters. And they were working on this novel concept of health as a human right. So he was working with a number of faculty at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health. And they would send correspondence. So one day I'm in his library and I see this letter that had Harvard University on it. So I ask him, what's a university? He tells me, that's where you go to get smart.
That's where you go to get smart. That's a very simple answer.
That's what, I mean, I was 5, you know. I said, okay, and what's this Harvard? And he tells me, oh, that's where you go to get really smart. So in my naive, you know, 5-year-old brain, I said, I'm smart, but I want to get really smart. So I actually thought Harvard was in Greece because the cartoons I used to watch about Plato. So if you told me to draw Harvard then, it was in Greece, there were pillars, you are wearing a toga, and you're sitting around in a circle having a Socratic way of learning.
You felt it had to be a space of philosophy.
Yes, that was my imagination. And so I wrote a letter. My high school counselor later termed it benevolent naivety. I wrote a letter to the headmaster of Harvard, telling him, headmaster. Because my school at the time, the head of my school was headmaster, headmistress. So I said, dear headmaster of Harvard, my name is Sangu Delle. I'm 5 years old. I live in Ghana. I'm smart, but I hear this is where you go to be really smart. So when can I start? 8 months later, I get a letter back from Neil Rudenstein in '92.
What was Neil at the time at Harvard?
Neil was the president.
Fantastic.
So I get the letter back, and I learned 3 things. The first is he's not headmaster, he's president, because the letter says office of the president. Okay. The second thing I learned is it's not in Greece, it's in a place called Cambridge, Massachusetts. And the third thing in Neil's letter, he wrote, and I quote, age 5 is a bit too young even for Harvard. So that's how my relationship with the school started. And I kept writing all the way through Larry Summers. Later I had a wonderful opportunity through the grace of God to take college level classes, university classes, while I was a freshman in high school. And from there went on to do my undergraduate education and graduate education there, and served in multiple roles in the school, and now on the board of overseers, president of the Harvard Club of Ghana.
The second African ever to hold that position.
Sadly, but hopefully we'll see a lot more to follow.
And you're in great company, because the first African to hold that position is Dr. Desmond Tutu.
Yes, the Archbishop was the first in the 80s, and for me it was also very special because I am an Archbishop Desmond Tutu Fellow.
Fantastic.
And so he's been an idol of mine for a very long time, and so I think that the honor of being an Archbishop Desmond Tutu Fellow and stepping into his shoes on the board has been very humbling and inspiring for me.
And then what caused you to now serve on the board? And not just to serve on the board, but to be the chair of the board of governors of Ashesi University. Without a doubt, maybe the most important university in Ghana today.
Yes, look, Ashesi, I've always argued, is one of the greatest gems we have in Africa. Right? I never went to Ashesi, but I'm so passionate about Ashesi because I know the impact that institution has on the lives of its students. I have hired people from Ashesi, and I've been blown away. There was 1 year in, I believe this was 2012, where I had interns from Harvard University, I had interns from Yale University, and I had interns from Ashesi. You could not tell the difference.
Whoa.
So much so that some of those interns, Isaac Bruce from Ashesi,
yep,
Rahim from Malji from Harvard College, as we speak today, they are still friends. They co-founded a business in Tanzania together. Yeah, from that internship in Accra. So Ashesi is it's just such an extraordinary place.
And this internship was at CarePoint?
This internship at the time was with Golden Palm Investments, the parent of CarePoint.
Okay.
It was an investment firm I founded about 19 years ago. So I'm very passionate about Ashesi. And I bonded with Patrick when I was speaking on a panel at the Africa Philanthropy Forum.
Where was this?
This was in Kigali.
Rwanda.
In Rwanda. And they asked the question of, you know, if you could donate $1 billion to any cause on the continent, what would it be? And so people are answering on the panel. You know, you have people that will say, look, we should give it to maybe eradicating malaria, or you should give it to clean water, you should give it to all these different things. My answer was simple. I said, I would give the $1 billion to Ashesi. And so everyone is just like, what?
And Patrick was in the audience?
He was in the audience.
In the audience?
He was in the audience,
Wow.
as was Rita Roy, the president and CEO of the MasterCard Foundation. And my argument was simple, and it's something I very strongly believe, that when I see the transformation Ashesi makes on its students, you can invest in clean water, you can invest in malaria, new problems will come. Or you can invest in the change makers and the change agents who will solve the problems of today and the problems of tomorrow. The greatest investment we can make is in human capital.
That's right.
And so I said that, and afterwards, you know, Patrick and I connected even more, and I've now been on the board for about 7-8 years, and towards the end of last year, in December was when the board elected me as its chair, which was, you know, a big honor for me, very humbling, and I feel the weight of the responsibility.
So to be the chair of the Board of Governors in Ghana, and to be the chair, or to be a member of the governing board in Harvard, tell me the similarities as well as the differences.
Yeah, so I'll start on the similarity side. You're dealing with governance of an institution of higher learning, right? So there are some similarities in terms of how you approach the governance, and those basics, right? So things around finance, audit and risk, the academic side of things in terms of
Curriculum comes in?
Curriculum, pedagogy, those things, you see similarities. The difference, of course, comes in the scale and scope, all right? So the Harvard Board of Overseers...
Harvard has, what, 14 different
We have 14 different institutions, right? So we just have, the governing boards oversee all, right? So whereas some places might have separate governing boards for maybe the medical school or the law school or the business school, we just have the overseers and the corporation that governs all the 14 schools. And so the complexity is of a different order. You're also dealing with an institution that is almost 400 years old. And so it's in some ways it's like...
you don't want to disturb or disrupt.
Exactly. But you need to balance that rich tradition and history with an outlook on modernity and the future. It's a bit like the Titanic, right? So change can be slow.
Yep.
So you're sometimes trying to make a Titanic a little bit of a speedboat. And there's also a broader, because of the sort of influence we have as a university on many things globally, there's a different approach to things where you can't just look at it from the lens, an insular lens. You have to think about it from an ecosystem perspective and the implications globally. But there's so many learnings that have been taken from the Harvard board and applying to Ashesi and vice versa. There have also been some incredible learnings from how we do things in Ashesi that have also been applying to the Harvard board. And that's an important point to underscore, because sometimes we always think of learning as one way.
No.
But there's a lot we also have to offer.
Exchange.
And it's an exchange, is mutual learning, shared learning.
Do some people think some learning is superior to another?
Yes.
Why so?
I think part of it is the colonize. I always say that the worst thing that was done to us was not the colonization of the bodies or the shackling of the bodies. It was a colonization of the mind. It was a mental slavery.
You know that song, Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but our own selves can free our minds.
Yeah. And you know, it's when I was writing my book, my publisher,
what's the title of that?
Making Futures, Young Entrepreneurs in a Dynamic Africa.
Good.
My publisher, Bibi, who is just an extraordinary force of a woman. I mean, Bibi is a special, extraordinary person. She's someone that you need to have on your show.
Yep.
Brilliant, brilliant woman.
I will bring her.
And Bibi, we'll be having conversations, and Bibi would always tell me, she says, Sangu, who lives in your head? I said, Bibi, what do you mean? She said, no, unpack and understand who lives in your head. Because, let's try this, for example.
Who lives
in your head?
Now, that's a question for everybody out there. Who
lives in your head?
In your head.
KKD, mention 3 entrepreneurs to me now.
Immediately?
Yes, right now.
Elon Musk?
Yes.
Bill Gates?
Yes.
I'm trying to find a Ghanaian.
Do you see? The first 2 you mentioned, white men.
That hurts.
Yes.
That hurts.
Right. Who lives in your head?
This hurts.
Our image of who an entrepreneur is and what a successful entrepreneur is very much male and is very much Obroni.
Now, the sad thing is, I wanted to start with a Ghanaian.
But it's not, it's embedded because it's the images we see, which is why shows like this are very important. For young people in Ghana and across the continent to see examples that look like them. It's very important.
I'm still struggling with Ghana. You know the name that has come up?
Yes.
Aliko Dangote.
You see?
Whoa!
But there are extraordinary stories out there. You have Gregory Roxon, M. Pharma, who's revolutionizing how we think about the drugs, providing access to drugs,
Sadly,
reducing...
we haven't even projected him.
There's Mishe Adi, young Ghanaian lady who is doing extraordinary things with bringing technology and using it to do cross-border trade. There are lots of dynamic young people doing incredible things.
There's Bright Sibbers, M. Pedigree.
There's Bright, my very good friend.
First. That should have come first.
There's Bright, my very, there's Farida Bedwe, who I always call the Ya Santiwa of our age, just extraordinary woman who did amazing things in tech entrepreneurship. We have the men and we have the women. We just don't.
We haven't projected.
We don't project them enough, and so our minds are colonized, and we need to actively and intentionally decolonize the minds, which is why I'm also very excited about what we do at Ashesi, the Africa-centric approach, right? The confidence in which we fill our students to know that you are excellent. Right? And so when you meet an Ashesi student, you feel the difference, right? Where we hold them to, we have an honor code at Ashesi.
Yeah.
No invigilators in the exam room. And when people hear about it, they say, our students hold each other accountable.
That's right.
And they pride themselves on integrity.
So no cheating.
And the brand, so there's no cheating. And so we have a lot of work to do in terms of how we decolonize our minds and how we make sure that we raise our children and young people to believe in themselves, to have that indomitable spirit, and to go out there and conquer the world, because the world is out there for our conquering.
This is interesting. Who lives in your head? More to come on Master of the Game with my special guest, Dr. Sangu Delle, the Chief Executive Officer of CarePoint, which runs 4 tech-forward health centers around Africa. Only on Master of the Game right after this.
It's party time in It's party time on what you say. Ola Bawo. As I introduce to you Safari Zoom Flex live on Ghana's #1. With Zoom Flex, you can join the fun wherever you find yourself via Zoomer. Ella, shake the body. But it's Friday. Of course, time is 10 p.m. sharp on Ghana's #1 with the man them DJ Last Week Official. We say Ola Ba Wo.
CTV, Ghana's #1.
Hello, it's a whole brand new season of the Siudine TV show. My name is Odansini Odilia. We come your way this and every Thursday from 5 to 5:30 p.m. This new season, we are looking at solving issues concerning properties. So if you have bought a land and you are having issues, you bought a house or you have any litigation issue concerning any property, come to us. And we are looking to sell properties on this very show. So if you are looking to buy a land, a house, or even to rent an apartment or a house, this is the show you have to watch. My name remains Odansini Odilia. Watch us this and every Thursday, 5 to 5:30 p.m. only on CTV.
CTV, Ghana's #1.
Redemption song. I gotta say thank you to my director for just making sure that that song came on. How do you feel about that?
It was, I mean, I thought it was brilliant, right? Because there was no communication here to there, but he picked up on the message. And is he an Ashesi alum?
No, we're creating an Ashesi at class.
You see?
Brilliant. Mr. Samia Danu's, he's an expert in managing television networks.
Fantastic.
And he's our head of content and production.
Oh, that's great.
So,
that's
great.
great.
Great work. Yeah, so I know your father, I know your family, and
Yes.
it makes me very proud, and in a way it makes me it stunts my ability to even conduct this interview, because it's like I know the answers already, but I have to ask for the audience. Yes. You grew up in a home where victims of torture who had fled Liberia had come to stay. And in this home, seeing these people become part of your family, your mother being the nurturing one who would care for all of them, your father being the doctor who was looking after patients throughout Ghana, came this tomato seed that grew out of concrete, Sangu Delle. So you had a peculiar upbringing, in a peculiar setting, and then a special education. Tell me about the upbringing first, and then we'll go to the education.
I was very blessed when you are a child, there are many things you don't appreciate. The older you get, the more you appreciate your parents, because you're able to look back and reflect and realize that, wow, all of this, there was a real purpose to it. I wouldn't be anywhere close to what I've been able to achieve in life were it not for the sacrifices that my parents made, some of which I didn't understand at the time, and the upbringing I got. And I want to highlight in particular 3 things. The first is faith. Faith.
Not religion, faith.
Faith. My parents raised us. We were a house of very deep faith. You know, my father is one of 86 children.
What?
One of 86 children. My family.
I know the mother didn't have 86 children.
No. Unless it was immaculate.
Who is this progenitor?
Oh, my grandfather, dear. I always joke and I always joke and say, look, my grandfather, he was a strong man. And only 4 got formal education. My father was one of the lucky 4. So education completely transformed the trajectory of his life. And he was educated thanks to the Catholic Church. My grand uncle, but in my culture, we call him grandfather. Your uncles are your fathers, your granduncles are your grandfathers. Was the late Cardinal Derry was the first cardinal from Ghana. In fact, in Nandom, we've only had 3 cardinals from Ghana. 2 of the 3 have come from Nandom.
Interesting.
The faith is so important all the way down to our roots. And so I was raised...
But Nandom is also surrounded by Muslims.
Yes, but Nandom itself is, and actually Upper West region is 90-something% Catholic. Very much, very heavy Catholic population, because back in the day, the Catholic Church went out all over and they were building schools, hospitals. In fact, today, the main hospital in Nandom, St. Teresa's, is a Catholic hospital. So as we speak, a lot of the infrastructure in many of these places in the Northern Hemisphere are actually still the ones provided for by the Catholic Church. And so grew up with faith. And that matters because it shaped a lot of my upbringing. I was partly raised by the Reverend nuns, the sisters at Kwasi Kyei Darkwah. I used to spend my weekends with them. Sister Domitila, from when and Sister Vicentia, and Sister Magdalene, all these sisters, till today I'm still in touch with them, from when I was 4. Right? And so they taught me all these important values, right, that have guided me. So number 1 for me is really faith. Number 2 was hard work. I would watch my father wake up
at 4.
At 4 every day. And this is for over 50 years. Goes to mass every single day. 6:30 mass at Kwasi Kyei Darkwah. I told you I do that now.
Yeah.
And he was literally the hardest working person I know. And so growing up with that modeled, my mother, super hard working. And so having that being modeled at home taught me the importance and the value of hard work. And it was very important to make sure you put your all. And it was, my mother, the stories I can tell you. Those who know my mother are laughing right now because they know Auntie Amira. There was one time my brother Bangu comes home, and I must have been in maybe class 5 or so. My mother is blasting me. My brother said, "Oh, what's going on?" She said, "Come and see. Your brother is careless. Look, the results have come, 95%.
95 over 100.
Never mind, I was first.
And you're being scolded.
My brother said, "Oh, mommy." She said, No. Where is the 5%? So my brother tried to beg for me. Do you know what she said? She said, "Bangu, it was multiple choice. They even gave him the answers." Like, how do you argue with that? She said they gave him the answers. They were staring at him in the face.
Did mom know at the time that you had Mensa level brilliance?
So
the very high IQ for those.
Yes. So when I was about 3, I was at Mother Care, and the head of the school, I think it was Mrs. Asari, she picked up on that and realized I was actually very quiet. Very, very quiet. So the irony is, at first they thought I was developmentally challenged because I wasn't speaking. But the reason I wasn't speaking was because I was bored out of my mind, because I could not relate. I was reading when I was 2.
You couldn't relate to the children in your class.
I couldn't relate.
Some of them older than you.
Yes.
But you saw them as children.
I just couldn't. And so she picked up on that, and she called my mother and said, "You have to nurture this very seriously. We think your child is gifted." And my mother, God bless her soul, just poured the rest of her life into nurturing it. She became like a hawk. I was only allowed to go to 1 party a year. Whoa. And the problem wasn't the 1 party. The problem for me was, how do you predict which party will be the best party. That was the biggest. That was the biggest thing. One party a year.
I had the best parties, but you were too young.
I was too young to come to it. Oh, my mother. Oh, my mother. By the time I enter the car, my mother had all the teachers' numbers. By the time I entered the car, geography at 11:17 a.m. What happened? Auntie Amira, Lord have mercy. And then see her today with her grandchildren. I actually get triggered. Her grandchildren, she's always talking to them very nicely and all of this. I said, you know, I said, but when I was young, I was getting the blasting, so. She said, please, the grandchildren, she said, it's the parents' job to do the disciplining. Me as a grandma, I just need to spoil them. But without the parents and the faith, the hard work, I wouldn't be here. And the third thing, which was very important for me, was my parents really taught me the importance of humility and giving back. And I saw it in the way and I think part of it was because of our family structure. Because we have such a large family, I have across the entire spectrum are family members. So I have family members who have been ministers, admirals of the Navy, ambassadors. I also have family members who are teachers. I have family members who are plumbers. I have family members who are dropouts. I have family members who are house staff, right? And so when you have that sort of diversity, you approach people and life very differently. You recognize the inherent dignity and value in everyone.
In humanity.
In humanity and in everyone. And my parents were very, very, they literally and figuratively beat any sense of elitism or arrogance. They beat it out of you. In fact, the fastest way to attract a slap from my mother, more so than anything else, if you acted naughty, she could forgive you. But if she sniffed a whiff of arrogance, you'll get it.
Your mom would not be very happy with the past governments.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
Oh my God. So, what do you remember in childhood as maybe the moment where you were very upset with dad or mom for maybe an act of discipline?
So, you're going to laugh, but one of the biggest fights I used to have with my mother, which her friends could not understand. I remember my auntie, Shika, walks in the house one day, and my mother is yelling at me, "You have to slow down with the reading. You are reading too much." And Shika is just like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" But it turns out that, so back then, the books I also liked. I liked the books they had at EPP. The American books and all these sorts of books. And my mother would go, and the books are expensive. She would buy 5 books for me.
You finished reading them in how many days?
Oh, in one day. So at some point she said, no. This boy is not reading the book. So she said I had to do book reports. I wrote the book reports. I'll still do it. So she got frustrated. She said, I can't afford to be buying you 5 books from EPP every single day. What is this? Slow down the reading. So it was my auntie who then said, I don't think they have it anymore. But my auntie said, look, go to Osu. There's a place called Books for Less. And you could get books literally for 5%, 10% of what we used to get it. So there we were both happy. Because now she could go, and for the same cost as the 5 books, we will buy 50 to 100 books. So that was how the blastings about reading too much ended. On my father's side, I think that the biggest thing really was time, right? I really enjoyed all the time I would spend with him. My father and I had a very special relationship. My father has never yelled at me before. Never. Has never beat me before. he always treated me as an adult, and he engaged with me as such. My father and I would debate philosophy. I was 6, 7. We'll debate Shakespeare.
Was Bangu
Nietzsche.
equally interested?
The rest of my siblings, a lot of them, like Bangu was a top student in his class, but he didn't have the same sorts of interests I did. So I had deep interest in philosophy with the old man and literature and those things. So we're constantly talking about it and history. And I quite remember I would follow him to meetings. I would dress up. Back then I used to wear suits like yours. I would dress up. In fact, I have all these funny pictures of me at little children's parties. Everyone is wearing their Ninja Turtles, and I'm hidden in a 3-piece suit, seriously looking. So I'll dress up, and I'll go with my dad to these meetings, and I'll never forget this one incident. I must have been about 6. So they were discussing something, and I had opinions. So I interjected, and I shared those opinions. And one of my daddy's friends was just like, this little mosquito, and my dad turned and said, "Don't you dare. Don't you dare." And told me to continue. And so, whereas, and it was very novel at that time. When I was growing up, children were to be seen but not heard. You were to be, in your shell. In your shell. But my parents allowed me to be me. They allowed me to flourish.
Just allowed.
They encouraged it. They said, your voice matters, your opinion matters. Whereas others would be like, oh, opinion. But when we do that, we dim the lights.
So we kill all the
precocious children.
And we turn them into little things that feel insignificant.
Yeah. And so I've learned that from what my parents did, and it's something that I do a lot of times with anytime I'm with the kids or with whoever. If I see younger people, especially even small kids, I make sure I'm intentional about recognizing the value of the ideas and engaging. And it's a caution to parents who are watching this program. It's a caution. I sometimes watch parents. Your children are talking to you. You're not even paying attention. You're not engaging. True. It has negative repercussions. Engage with them. Put your phone down. Spend a bit of time engaging. My dad was very busy, going all over Ghana, seeing patients, doing his human rights work, doing all of that. But the time I had with him, there were no phones. It was just direct. So if we had 30 minutes, it was 30 minutes of intense. And I learned so much from those interactions, and it boosted my confidence, and it allowed me to dream and believe that nothing was impossible. I'll tell you another funny story about the old man. The old man is a very interesting character. There was a time when the old man was having a meeting at Rabito, and he told us, back then the residence was just next to the clinic. He told us, do not come and interrupt me for any reason. For any reason. Bangu comes and interrupts his meeting. So the old man comes out visibly enraged. Did I not tell you not to come? And Bangu says, oh, Daddy, it's an Obroni. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. That was my old man lost it. Lost it. Completely lost it. And I mean, he lost it.
The client was a white person.
My dad lost it. And the follow-up to that, after that incident, I remember there was an Obroni person who was working for him. The day the guy was being let go, my dad actually sent for us to come from school early. We were in his office when he fired the guy. And when I was older, I actually asked him about it. And the reason he did that was he wanted to decolonize our mind, especially after witnessing what had happened. And so the beauty of that, KKD, was when I went to the US, I didn't, what inferiority
at all.
For what?
It just doesn't exist.
It does not exist.
It doesn't exist.
I went in with the confidence knowing that, but these people, some of them came to work for Daddy. And they even sacked him. So I didn't have that, and I'm so grateful to God for that, because it allowed me to know that I'm just as capable. And I think that sometimes can be a handicap. And I'm just grateful to God and grateful to my parents.
Yeah, the sad truth is, sometimes people mistake confidence for arrogance.
Yes.
But my father makes it very clear, opening Kwasi Darkwah of Adansi Dumpuas. He makes it very clear. He says, confidence is actually something that flows out of competence. When you have competence, the confidence flows naturally. Because, you know, you can fake it.
That's true.
But faking it does not necessarily make it. So learn your craft and know something, master something, and that something will give you confidence. And then when you gain that confidence, you know, you can extrapolate on that to do other things. So we're just fortunate in the way we were raised.
Absolutely.
We should be just thankful to God.
No, absolutely.
For our lottery win in the gene pool, because the parents that raised us have made us. But now I want to come to education, because the parents, I mean, naturally they're shepherds, not engineers.
Yes.
You know, there isn't so much they can do other than what the Creator has determined. They can give us the right environment, but beyond that initial environment they create for us, they take us to school, and there we meet other people who may influence us and impact us positively or negatively. Tell me about your travel through education.
So education has, I'm a nerd. I'm a super nerd. I love learning.
You don't look like a
Oh,
nerd.
I love learning.
For somebody who dresses the way you do, nobody will think you're a nerd.
I'm a super nerd. I'm just a well-dressed nerd. But I'm a super nerd. Like, anyone who knows me will tell you that there's nothing that excites me more than putting me behind a book.
Now, it's kind of weird. When we met at Sir Sam Jonas,
Yes.
we were discussing philosophy.
We were.
Why the heck were we discussing philosophy?
Because we were a bunch of nerds. Yeah, we're a bunch of nerds discussing Nietzsche and Hegel and all of that. I'm a nerd. Yeah. And the other thing also is I'm neurodivergent. I've come to realize that my brain operates differently. So I was at Kwasi Kyei. I was top of my class at Kwasi Kyei. I was at Ghana International School. I was top of my class there. And then I got a scholarship to attend the Petty School in New Jersey, about 10 minutes from Princeton. Extraordinary experience.
Why that far away from Ghana?
Because remember I told you when I was writing the letters to Harvard, so when I joined GIS in 1999, that was the first time I had access to computers and the internet. So I would go to the Harvard website and I would read up on what's going on, the research they're doing, programs. And then on one of those days, I discovered that they actually had a special summer program where you can take university-level courses.
Wow.
As a high school student. But it was for just as you are entering your final year of high school. So I wrote to them and I said, look, I know I'm just a freshman in high school and not a senior, but I really want to do this program. I sent copies of the correspondence I had from Neil Rudenstein to Larry Summers.
From when you were 5?
Yes. And then I had a letter written by my history teacher at GIS, Mr. Manuel Brown. I'll never forget, because in his letter, he wrote that he believes, as my teacher, that I have the capability to study at a university level. And so they waived that requirement for me and allowed me in. So when I was at Harvard on campus, I did international relations with Professor John Garofano, who I'm still in touch with.
Fantastic.
And then I did calculus. So while I was there, I met all these kids who were going to all these elite prep and boarding schools in the US. And I was blown away. I mean, these kids were telling me they are learning genetics and robotics, and I was like, what?
You were still learning history and
right?
geography.
And there was one child, Michael Lee, who was a golfer and told me that, oh, you know, he golfs on the school team. They have an 18-hole golf course. I said, Puli, where do you Puli? That time, Ghana, 18-hole golf courses at that time. This was over 20.
I think only at Chimota.
I was only at Chimota back then. We didn't really have. So I said, the whole Ghana, maximum, maybe we had 2.
But he had it in school.
In your high school. I was like, this guy's lying. And it turned out, no, it was true. So it blew my mind. And then what blew my mind more was, I looked at the price tag. Back then was about $60-something thousand a year. Now it's 70-something. I looked at it, I said, oh, this one, if we sell all of Nandom, we'll not get the money. So I said, no, there's no point. And they said, no, you should apply. We have scholarships. I was very confused because growing up in Ghana, it was simple. If you could afford, you went. That's it. If you could not afford, you didn't go. It was very straightforward.
You couldn't afford Shushan boys, straight.
You just don't go. So this concept that there was scholarship, I said, I'm trying to understand. And they said, yes, they have these financial aid programs. And I was just wondering, wait. So some dead Obroni guy has left money that is
sitting down
so purportedly
some poor African can come to school.
I said, there's no. Do they want my leg? Do they, like, it doesn't make sense. Why are they just helping me?
They want your liver.
Like, what's going on here? And it was a transformational experience because it put the seeds of my philanthropy, and that's why I'm so passionate about democratizing access and why I do all the work I do in my foundation, because it taught me that you don't need to know people to help people.
True.
And in fact, it even brings me to scripture.
You gotta say that again. You don't
need to know people to help people.
To help people.
And scripture, we see it in scripture. St. Paul speaks about how if you help people even the pagans do it.
Yep.
Even the unbelievers help their family and friends.
Of course.
So how does that make you different? What makes you different and what differentiates you as a Christian is helping people you don't know, and the people you know, helping your enemies, loving your enemies. That is the true test of a Christian.
That also brings us to the Good Samaritan.
Yes.
He didn't only have good intentions, he also had some money.
Absolutely.
And that should remind us all that when we have some money, we shouldn't build higher walls, we should build longer tables.
Absolutely. So Pedi was an amazing experience. Then from there, did Harvard undergrad, where I studied economics and African studies, focusing on development. You
remember any lecturer there who had great impact on you?
I mean, a number of lecturers who completely changed my life. Probably one of the most eminent African historians of all time, Professor Emmanuel Achampong, our very own, a colossus, a towering icon of intellect at Harvard. And he actually ended up being one of my thesis advisors.
Fantastic.
Henry Louis Gates Jr., Skip Gates, another legend who became my academic father, and he wrote the foreword to my book. I'm actually bringing him to Ghana in June.
Fantastic.
Yes, he's going to be. He's getting an honorary doctorate from the University of Cape Coast.
What thesis did you write for the undergrad program?
So my thesis was on the value of water and sanitation in development. And it was an interesting thesis because it wasn't just theoretical. I actually did a practical project. I implemented a water and sanitation project in Ejimante, and so just next to Kitase. So it was a new initiative called social engagement thesis, where your thesis is not just theoretical; it has to be rooted and grounded in real life practical applications.
Retrospective commentary on water and sanitation in development and Galamsey in Ghana.
How much time do you have? No, I mean, look, it's
an indictment on all of us.
It really is. But you see, Galamsey is complex. Much like corruption, it's easy to just say, end the corruption, stop the stealing, stop the polluting of the water bodies, but that oversimplifies and it doesn't actually present a sustainable solution to the problem, right? What is the problem? Why are people polluting the water bodies? Poverty. It's driven by a lack of economic opportunities. It's driven by a lack of social mobility. It's driven by a massive gap, and driven by the failure of leadership and the failure of government to create the right environment to lead to socio-economic transformation.
But isn't it imbecile-level poverty to say because you don't have food to eat or a battery to power some equipment in your home, you will rid your community of drinking water?
Yes, but you see, it is, of course, when we look at it from that perspective, for sure. But what I'm saying here is, in no way will I defend the activities, but I'm saying that if you want to stop it and you don't understand the underlying cause of it, you will fail. So if we don't address the economic issues and how we create economic opportunities, because I read a report somewhere, I can't attest to the validity of the numbers, but it seemed to suggest that as many as 2 million Ghanaians are involved.
It's an industry,
right?
It's a legitimate industry now.
So, and I think this is why, if you look at a lot of what President Mahama has discussed about this, he speaks about not eliminating it, but doing it in an environmentally responsible way, right? We have all these resources, right? If we look at, look at the fact that our gold, the amount of gold we've had, some of our mines have been mined for 100 years. What transformation has come out of it?
What do we have to show for it?
What do we have to show for it? What do we have to show for it? And the disconnect between the resources that God has endowed us with and blessed us with versus what the people on the ground see, feel, and experience, right? And so I don't think that we have been fair to a lot of the communities that give us all these resources, right? We've not been fair to them. And it's one thing to not do anything for them, but it's another thing to allow the sort of degradation that has occurred in many of these communities.
That makes them so desperate.
Yes.
That they will do the very
So I'm saying it's a public health issue, but it's also an economic issue.
True.
And if we just focus on the public health and we don't look at the economic issues and we don't understand the political economy at play,
I come from Adansi. My mother is from Adansi, Abidjan, where our royalty resides. And we own most of the lands of Obuasi in conjunction with other villages around us. And if I look at the development in that area, that has given us the Obuasi gold mines, the Ashanti gold fields, and I look at how wretched the area still is, I ask myself, why must government take all the corporate taxes that they get from the people who come from abroad to mine gold here and not develop this area? How does the money even go to Accra to make tarred roads if you cannot develop the area and build decent schools and colleges and universities for the people in that area? If you cannot do anything at all for them, can't you even create some basic industry so that the local people can find work to do? So you're very right in what you say.
Yeah, and you know, there are three distinct issues here. So the first is how we negotiate these agreements. The second is how we let the communities benefit. And then the third is how we add value. On how we negotiate the agreements, well, I mean, if you look at our agreements, it's horribly done. You will think that the government representatives are working for the other side.
Exactly.
Right? Let me highlight an example of what to me is a gold standard. Botswana. And everybody watching, go and learn the story of Botswana. Botswana has an extraordinary story when you learn and read about the first president and how he came to be.
Are they paying students at university?
Yes. Let me look, Botswana, free healthcare, free education.
Exactly.
Let me tell you, what's interesting to me about Botswana is when the De Beers came and wanted to mine the diamonds, Botswana said, we'll leave them in the ground. If you want to mine them, it will be on our terms. What were those terms? They said 50-50.
End of story.
End of story. If you don't want, you can go. We'll keep it in the ground. After all, it's been in the ground this whole time. We've survived. And so it's the only time the BS signed a contract. 50-50 till today. Then they didn't just stop there. They created a structure that allows the proceeds to go into and to be invested in education and health and all these things. And so that's why Botswana has had incredible governance.
How can Botswana, also an African country, have less selfish and less greedy leaders than Ghana, another African country?
You know, I think that part of it is the early on, the structures Botswana put in place, right? The institutions they put in place have really helped them to be able to and the culture also, and I think it starts right from the top. So they have benefited from having great leadership, right? Great leadership that has permeated throughout the society. On our end, we've, and especially in our most recent history, we have suffered from atrocious leadership. Really, really bad leadership. And it's not just bad leadership. I say that in Ghana, the problem we have is not just a leadership problem. We also have a citizenship problem, right? Because our leaders in many ways are also a reflection of our society.
Worst reflection of our society.
Yes. But we put them there, right? Which is why I was so proud of Ghanaians in the last election. Because even though there was clear evidence of significant sums of money being used to sway votes, Ghanaians said, sure, but we're voting with our conscience. And there's that political awakening and that spirit of accountability that we need to institutionalize across the country to make sure that government works. And we need to fix it across the board. I'll tell you that I'm also on the board of Ghana International School. And I remember an issue during COVID. We had clear rules, very clear rules. If you have certain conditions, you don't come to school to infect others.
End of story.
There were parents who knew their children were sick, who were still sending their children to school.
Who does that?
So what are you teaching the kids? Right? A lot of times we talk about the corrupt and the bad practices, but we don't recognize the ways in which we're all responsible. The same Ghanaian that we say, oh, Ghana man time. When it's visa appointment at the US or UK embassy, nobody is late.
You were on time.
Yeah.
All my guests are on time.
Nobody is late.
Robert Ahunkalinzi was here on Monday. He was on time. So my question is, if the Ghanaians I invite on Master of the Game are all on time, aren't they Ghanaians too?
They are. We need to change the narrative, and we need to all take collective responsibility for transforming this country. And it starts, it starts with, I encourage everybody, I'm not even going to use any examples from Europe. No, within Africa. Go to Rwanda. Go to Kigali. Very clean. Very, very clean. Look at Accra. Very dirty. Discipline. How you watch how we drive on the roads, how we treat the environment, all those things matter and are important. And it's, I think, one of the grave mistakes of our current educational system is we've stripped away a lot of the civic education. Right?
Civics and citizenship, should it be taught at school?
100,000%. We need to bring it back.
Civics and citizenship.
And we need to reform our national service. We need to reform our national service. Our national service should be a program that actually inculcates certain values and builds up patriotism and puts people in the mindset of service.
So by the end of national service, there must be maybe 7 success criteria where you should take all.
Those.
If not, you haven't finished the national service.
It's not just about saying, yes, I went to this place for 1 year. No. And we need to think about it strategically, right?
Interesting. You know, coming to work this morning, my chauffeur said something that nearly upset me. He says, look at your mate. And I didn't exactly see because I was reading. And I look up. I said, who? He says, your mate. And I said, what do you mean, my mate? Apparently, a big Land Cruiser, just like the one we were in, had just rolled down their window and thrown something out of the window onto the motorway and just drove on. And I said, so why do you call him my mate? He says, aren't you the guys who use the big cars in Ghana? Look at what they do. So he was asking whether we shouldn't take the number of the guy and have it played on TV this morning. So, let's leave it.
Yeah. No, it's a big problem.
So when people make a fool of themselves, they are our mates.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
They represent all of us.
They do. And we have a moral responsibility to call that all out. And we've abdicated that responsibility. We've allowed the depravity to go on unchecked and with impunity. Right? And look, the last I've been so disappointed.
In the last 4 years, the last 8 years, the last 12 years? I mean, the last 8. If you say the last 8, then it's clearly Nana Akufo-Addo's governance.
Oh, there's no secret. I've been very vocal in my criticisms of the unprecedented corruption and the failures of that administration. But for me, I'm not even talking about them. I was very deeply disturbed. As a man of deep faith, I was deeply disturbed by the failure of the church leadership. Right? When it was LGBTQ issues, the church was loud. We heard them. They came out in their numbers. Galamsey, I was happy that they all came out in their numbers. But on other things, they're silent. The corruption, they're silent. Right? On other matters, they're silent. What is this selective morality?
Is it hypocrisy?
To me, it's a big problem. Because what are we modeling for our youth if the custodians and the guardians of our spiritual life are not calling out the Sodom and Gomorrah type behavior in leadership? They're failing us.
Well, they say if you take a pastor and a prostitute and you lock them in a room for 2 days, one will convert the other. Is it that the church and the politicians in one room for 2 days, the politicians have converted the church?
It's something that troubles me. It really troubles me deeply. And I pray for our leaders every day. Every day at Mass, I pray for our leaders. When I'm praying my rosary, I pray for our leaders. I pray for the church. I pray for our religious leaders.
I have a Palestinian friend in England who says, I pray for all the leaders, and I pray that God will take the bad ones away quicker. That's an expression that could come out of your mouth.
I'm telling you. But, even as much as I criticized former president Nana Akufo-Addo, I prayed for him every day. And I prayed for him every day because my faith demands so. If you remember King David, even though he had multiple opportunities to, he never touched King Saul. Because he said, it is not for me to touch the Lord's anointed. King Saul was objectively a bad king. But he was the Lord's anointed because it is the Lord who selects our leaders, for good or for bad.
Sometimes to teach us a lesson.
Sometimes to teach us a lesson.
And sometimes to bring us a blessing.
Correct. And so, even though I was very upset And I was especially upset because I felt like there was so much goodwill and so much opportunity that was squandered. I still prayed for the president every day.
I cannot help but bring this up. Well, 12 is $1 billion. Burkina Faso, a young president, has set up a tomato processing factory to make the lives of his people better. With multiples of that amount, we have dug something we cannot even use as a swimming pool by first destroying over 50 homesteads and then renting places for the people who used to live there, spending national resources to pay for those. How did we come to a pass where an elected official could say, I made a promise to God, so I'm going to use the state's finances to do it? How did we get to such a pass?
So, you know, there are multiple angles here. To me, let's even say, yes, you made a vow to God. Let's say you are going to use state funds to do it. My issue is, if you are going to be corrupt, at least be competent. If you are going to be incompetent, at least do it with, have the integrity. You can't be both corrupt and incompetent, right? So you make a vow to God, you don't honor that vow, you take state resources, the order of $58 million, and there's a hole left, right? At least if you had completed it, finished it, it's done, and you can say that, okay, you should not have used state resources, but at least you honored your vow.
One highly irritated social media commentator captured it in a very simple meme. He says, Ghana is cursed because you elected a leader who promised God a church and ended up building himself a statue.
Yeah. And you know, for me, spiritually, in the spiritual realm, it was very clear to me that the hand of God was not going to be in their favor during the elections. It was very, very clear to me. And again, it goes back to that. Nobody forces you to make a vow. But you made a vow in public that you are going to honor God in this way. Not only did you not fulfill the vow, but the process of doing it was done in ways that took money from the state, money that should have gone to doing kingdom work in terms of supporting
even Lucifer will be upset with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's and so at that moment I said, I felt in the spirit that I said, and you see this in scripture where when you do certain things and the hand of God moves away, that's when the Israelites all get defeated and they get carried away by the Assyrians and others, right? And so I was joking with a friend. I said, that's why you will have e-gates not work, or someone will be talking, meaning to say one person, then suddenly their tongue will change and start saying, I said, it's not by accident too. It's the Holy Spirit that's causing all these things, you know? So but then again, we need to also reflect on ourselves. The president did not come via a coup. We elected him. And we elected him again. Right? And we were all cowering in fear and not speaking about the injustices.
Cowering in fear, no, were you?
No, yes. But there were repercussions.
But we were attacked.
We were attacked. There were repercussions. I had 16 incidences with the police. I got assaulted by a police officer. I recorded videos of all of this. I was with my daughter, and this was something that deeply angered me. I was with my 2-year-old daughter, KKD, when they pulled me out of my vehicle in the hot sun, strip searched the vehicle. I'm saying that the water tank, they removed the cops on. I mean, and it was purposely to just frustrate me. Anytime I landed, and I would change cars, it reached a point, me and them started laughing. It was clear.
And where are such police officers when government changes? Do they see you and say, I'm sorry, it was yes, Amasa?
Look, one of them, me and him have become friends even. Because I also recognize that he's just following orders. Right? He's following orders. He's just a cog in the wheel. He's following orders.
You know the song of Fela Ransom and Nicola Pokuti? Zombie, oh, zombie, zombie, oh, zombie. You know, you must be a police officer, but you must also have a brain.
Yeah. But you know, and God is, I would say that the Lord is extraordinary in how he works. For a couple of years, UPSA had been trying to get me to give a keynote lecture. And they were having a conference. Ironically, the conference was going to talk about things including academic freedom and all of these things. I was billed as a keynote speaker. It was publicized everywhere. It was in the newspapers, TV, radio. The conference was scheduled for December 17th. On December 6th, I was in Nandom. I get a call from my very good friend, who's a dean there, that
we have to cancel?
He was so embarrassed about it, and he was so angry, but he said it's beyond me that orders from above, from the government, to cancel my invitation, to resend my invitation the day before elections. Day before elections. And for me, it is, I mean...
This is a country that talks about freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech. And if you're academic freedom, universities should be the very places where you allow discourse, difficult conversations, contrarian views. You want to allow the universities to be spaces where debate can flourish,
of course,
where all views are represented. I've always said...
In my case, I was banned from speaking on the National Broadcasting Corporation. So my question now is, my dear friend Amin, what are you going to do now? Are you still banning me? It's pathetic.
It really is. It's
pathetic the way we elevate a few of our own kinsmen who are not special in any field of endeavor per se, who are just citizens like everybody trying to pay their bills and look after their families. We put them in a position of authority, and all of a sudden they think everybody is in serfdom.
You know, it also to me is a problem with how we think about leadership, right? When I think about leadership, I think about servant leadership. And the first thing that comes to my mind is Jesus Christ washing the feet of his disciples. That is servant leadership. But our idea of leadership is the emperor on the throne. And it's not the right type of leadership that we need, and it's not conducive to the sort of growth and development that we so badly need. And so we need to re-look at how we even look at leadership, how we think about leadership, how we manifest it, and we need to move towards servant leadership.
And how can we also work towards getting the people that are around the leader to be competent and confident people who are able to speak truth, so that when the emperor is naked, somebody can tell them.
Yeah. You know,
because as we stand, the president makes some 7,000 appointments.
Which is insane.
In life, how do you get to know 7,000 extremely competent people?
Yeah.
How do you get to know them in life? You've been through all these special places and education and programs. Do you still have some... Can you say you know 7,000 people that will be able to help you run a country?
No.
So why don't we look at meritocracy? Why don't we let everybody go and apply for certain jobs and let a panel select the very best of them, not just based on qualification, but based on practice and exceptionalism?
So, you know, it's an interesting point. I think that meritocracy itself, I would argue that I've always said meritocracy is a scam. Meritocracy is something we've created to to give this illusion of a fair system. The system has never been fair.
It's rigged.
It's rigged, right? Those with privilege and opportunities will always win in such a system. And so I think that we want to be more meritocratic, but we want to balance that with making sure that we're also being inclusive. Because otherwise, we're going to end up with a situation where there will be elite capture.
True.
And that also would not be good for our democratic, our young democracy and the growth.
How do we get to this point of inclusivity where we can accept that we are doing good by everybody?
I think it starts from the design. And one of the examples I always put is, it's very clear to me that no woman was involved in the design of a seatbelt. There was no woman on the design team. Very clear. Because if there was a woman on the design team, it will not be the way it is. It's not comfortable for women. So right from design, the people who are designing things, who are planning, all those people need to be diverse, and you need to
encourage inclusivity from the scratch.
From the scratch. Right? From the scratch.
Well, in that case, I think no black man was included in the design of lighting for sets. Because for darker skin, you need much, much more light.
Exactly. But even they have the, sometimes the infrared when you go to bus. A lot of times I go there and it's not working. Because it wasn't designed. It wasn't designed.
The melanin-rich skin. There's plenty to talk about on Master of the Game when we come back, because I want to see what he studied for his master's degree and what he did for his PhD and how he's using these to impact lives not just in Ghana but around the world. Master of the Game with my special guest, Dr. Sangu Delle, right after this.
Evergreen memories. Wow. We can do things in front of him. Abra buffer for now parenting edi omo enkwada eba. It na one corner na me put some say. Na ebi but check. We bonded as colleagues at the dining hall, the dormitories, classrooms. It's just say, me na kan ye bomo prekope. But the question is, and now we hey, now squad you are here. Or like you are here. Floozy. And you boys in here. Where you stay? If you school, you are by the point. If you move to Kwai, if you move to university, if you move to Abrabon 70, you have to retire to the villages. We are here to reunite you and ensure that we can help each other. But before that, St. Louis, Ola, Wegehi, Holiko, Preset, St. Peter's, and Alco Bishop Herman, and St. Augustine. This is the platform for you. CTV Adaroma, the most program neighbor, Family and Friends Reunion. Join me, Dr. Kofi Annan, on Family and Friends Reunion as we share memories and experiences in life, only on CTV, Ghana's #1.
CTV, Ghana's #1.
2024 has been an amazing year, but I believe 2025 is going to be much better. We at High Sense want to say a very big thank you to you for patronizing us. Stay blessed and Happy New Year. I go by the name Dance God Lloyd. Official
2025, we can't wait to see you. We can't wait to have fun with you. High Sense loves you. It's your girl Afrenita, Official
2024, so High Sense money koye maudia. And then 2025, a triple. Yes, so friends, High Sense the Ghana for you now say. Who costs no money yenye juma? Yet damn say. High Sense Mama Official.
Hisense, everyday prices for everyday people.
It's party time, I'm watching it there. Ola Bawo, as I introduce to you Safari Zoom Flex live on Ghana's #1. With Zoom Flex, you can join the fun wherever you find yourself via Zoomer. Ella, shake the body. God, it's Friday. Of course, time is 10 p.m. sharp on Ghana's #1 with the man them DJ Last Week Official. We say Ola Bawo.
Give me the move, give me the vibe, give me the move, give me the vibe, give me the move, give me
CTV, Ghana's #1.
Has been an amazing year, but I believe 2025 is going to be much better. We at Hisense want to say a very big thank you to you for patronizing us. Stay blessed and Happy New Year. I go by the name Dance God Lloyd. Official po!
2025, we can't wait to see you. We can't wait to have fun with you. Hisense loves you. It's your girl Afronita, Official pa.
2024, it's a Hisense money koye maudia. And then at 2025, a triple. Yes, so friends, son. Hisense the Ghana for you now say. Oh, cause no money yenye juma. Yet damn say. Hisense mama Official po! Hisense, everyday prices for everyday people.
Hello, it's a whole brand new season of the Socio-economic TV show. My name is Odansini Odilia. We come your way this and every Thursday from 5 to 5:30 p.m. This new season, we are looking at solving issues concerning properties. So if you have bought a land and you are having issues, you bought a house or you have any litigation issue concerning any property, come to us. And we are looking to sell properties on this very show. So if you are looking to buy a land, a house, or even to rent an apartment or a house, this is the show you have to watch. My name remains Odansini Odilia. Watch us this and every Thursday, 5 to 5:30 p.m. only on CTV.
CTV, Ghana's #1.
It's party time, I'm watching it there. Ola Bawo, as I introduce to you Safari Zoom Flex live on Ghana's #1. With Zoom Flex, you can join the fun wherever you find yourself via Zoomer. Ella, shake the body. God, it's Friday. Of course, time is 10 p.m. sharp on Ghana's #1 with the man them DJ Last Week Official. We say Ola Bawo.
Give me the move, give me the vibe, give me the move, give me the vibe, give me the move, give me the
CTV, Ghana's #1.
Sangu Delle. I don't know whether I should say son of one of my great mentors, Dr. Edmond N. Delle. But Sangu, you're just brilliant.
Okay.
Conversing with you and the messages I'm getting, people are just so delighted. They want to hear more voices like yours on the media space because there's too much noise on the Ghana media space. We need to have people who are experts in their field of endeavor, who have something inspirational to share talking to us. And I'm thankful to you that you accepted to come on Master of the Game. But next, about your education, and then the conversation went a bit around. I want to bring you back to when you finished your first degree. You decided to pursue your master's at the same university.
Yes, so what I did was I've always straddled the line of scholar, entrepreneur, and activist/philanthropist, right? So while I was at Harvard University for my first degree, I started my nonprofit, Clean Aqua, which up to when we transitioned to the foundation in 2022, we did projects in 160 communities, brought clean water to about 200,000 people. I also started...
Where were these communities?
Oh, in Suhuma, Yenswano, Nandom. I had mentioned Ejimante, where we also went and did some projects.
So what exactly did you do? Boreholes?
So we did boreholes, mechanized boreholes. We did provision of latrines. We did wash training, provision of the infrastructure also for some of the schools.
It's a non-profit, but how did you get your funding?
So it was a mix of, we would host, I established a 501c3 in the US. So we'll host fundraisers. When I started working, I would allocate capital from my earnings to support some of the projects. And around the same time, this was 2006, I had also set up Golden Palm Investments.
What did Golden Palm Investments do?
So Golden Palm Investments is, today we are a leading Africa and Middle East focused venture capital firm. So we invest in startups. We've backed some of the most amazing African startups, like Flutterwave, which is Africa's most valuable startup fintech company.
Was it capitalized through equity from shareholders?
Yes, so we were involved in the first, right when the company started, and we kept investing throughout. Flutterwave was a simple idea, this idea of how do you create one API so that you can send money across Africa, bank, card, Momo, whatever it is, seamlessly. Their last valuation, they were last valued at $3 billion, a higher valuation than the market capitalization of a lot of banks. Right? Technology is the future. Andela, which Mark Zuckerberg invested in them, led their Series B, training developers.
What role did you play in Andela?
So Andela, I was, Golden Palm were among the first investors, and then I served on their advisory board with Fred Swanica and a few others. Then we have M-Pharma, I had mentioned, Gregory Roxon, Wasoko, and a few others. So I've always straddled that line.
So you're a serial entrepreneur?
Yes, yes. So what then happened was I knew that ultimately I am going to just do my own thing. But I wanted to make sure that I have all the tools, the training, the networks, and I have everything that I need to be able to be successful in what I want to achieve.
And that led you to do your master's degree writing what? Or researching
so
what?
At first, it led me to, right after uni, I didn't go straight into the grad program. I was running Golden Palm Investments and a nonprofit, but I wanted to get some formal technical training. So I spent some time on Wall Street. So I Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, doing investing, special situations investing. So that's where I learned a lot.
You worked as an employee there?
Yeah, I was on the investment team, and then I joined a fund, Valiant Capital Partners. You don't come across
to me as an employee.
Well, you know, it goes back to what I told you. My parents taught me humility, right? So even if you want to be a CEO or your own entrepreneur, or whatever, you need a humility to learn from others. And in fact, it was. At that time I was there, I was CEO of Golden Palm Investments, but I knew there were gaps in my knowledge and my training. So I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to learn from the best, right? So I learned from, and what's interesting is my bosses from Goldman Sachs, from Morgan Stanley, from Valiant Capital, today they're all investors in my business.
Interesting, because Mr. Robert Ahunka Lindsay, former Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry and former CEO of GIPC, was here just 2 days ago, and he talked about how you got to have a plan, and sometimes you need to step back to be able to move forward. So it doesn't matter that you're already a CEO. Sometimes you got to step back and use the humility that your parents taught you to learn what you need to go forward.
And I learned so much. I learned so much. I'm so thankful to those institutions. At Valiant especially, I was doing global investing, so public stock markets, macro. During the European crisis, we shorted the European debt. So it's macro investing in Japan. We're doing venture capital. We invested in Uber, Dropbox, Facebook, Pinterest. So I was able to see some of that, which shaped a lot of what I ended up doing at Golden Palm Investments, where we became one of the leading tech investors on the continent.
Fantastic.
So I was learning all these things. We're doing private equity, and it was incredible training. So then I said, okay, I have the training. I now want to build on some of the knowledge, build some networks, and all of that. So I did, again, this is the super nerd part. So I did a number of programs concurrently.
Oh, cool.
So I did the Doctor of Law, Juris Doctor program at Harvard Law School. I did an MBA at Harvard Business School. I did a Master's in International Human Rights Law at Oxford University, New College, which incidentally actually is the college where President Akufo-Addo spent some time. He and I have actually bonded over that. We've actually bonded over that, over New College.
I like how you put it very nicely. He spent some time.
Yes, I mean, he did. He's he was so we always connect over that New College connection, and so I did international human rights law at Oxford, and then I did a PhD in economic anthropology and African studies at the University of Birmingham.
Economic anthropology, your research was skewed towards women.
Yeah, I was looking at female technology entrepreneurs in Ghana, and so I spent a lot of time. I actually, interestingly enough, in the introduction, I have a picture and some excerpts from an interview I did with Baumia on the digitalization agenda, because a part of it that I'm looking at is the role of government in this creation of the digital economy, the impact of these global funding flows. Across Africa, we have the highest rate of female entrepreneurship in the world. In Ghana, we have a higher rate of female entrepreneurship than male entrepreneurship, right? I mean, when you think of, if I tell you to think of the quintessential Ghanaian business person, the first person we think of is a Ghanaian woman trader. That's who we know are the real...
They run the real market.
They run the real market. Yet somehow, venture capital flows to Africa, which a couple of years ago reached a peak of $5 billion. Women don't even get 3% of that.
Is that the reason why the president wants to set up a women's bank?
That is part of the reason, because there's a very serious inequality, a gendered inequality that prevents women from getting access to finance in the same way that men have been able to.
And you think this is conscious?
I think it is not conscious. It's often unconscious. A lot of the biases tend to be unconscious. But where does it come from? It's not even so much a local thing. It's global. Why do I say that? Out of all the money over this past year, over $2 point something billion in venture capital flows to Africa, only 20% come from Africans. 80% come from funders outside
international
Africa.
Organizations, quasi.
So every $100, only $20 comes from Africa. $60 comes from North America, mostly Silicon Valley. Now, Silicon Valley itself has a gender problem where women receive very little funding. Majority of the people making capital decisions are men, overwhelmingly white males who went to Harvard, MIT, Stanford. And so it creates these inequalities, because what now ends up happening is the issues, the inequalities we see in Silicon Valley trickles down because they're funding 60% of the venture flows in Africa. So you start to see some of those challenges. And then that's why I was telling you that meritocracy is a scam.
But if we have these challenges that we have identified,
Yes.
why is it that when we know full well that women are the greatest entrepreneurs in our land,
Yes.
we haven't resolved to do something about it?
Look, that's why I'm encouraged by the president's decision to say, look, we are going to create a bank focused on women. It's about time. I want to even challenge the president to do more. Why do we only have 20% of the funding flows coming from Africa? In the US, how did they build, and in Israel and in some of these other places, how did they build the venture ecosystem? They built the venture ecosystem through long-term capital investments that come from pension funds.
True.
Right? So a lot of the LPs, a lot of the investors who give money to these fund managers, who then invest in these entrepreneurs, who then support the ecosystem, come from pension funds. Here,
where do our pension funds go?
Dubious investments
that
right,
make no money. That
there was a
end up
report
benefiting just a few people.
There was a report from the ILO, the United Nations ILO. I think this was
International
either
Labour Organization.
Labour Organization. I think this was either last year or the year before. If you look at the real rate of return on SNIT assets, it's criminal. It's criminal. I think it ended up being about 1%.
So in that case, when we have appointed people to positions of authority to do work for government, and we give them a brief, and we set targets for them, because I don't think anybody should be a CEO anywhere when there are no targets set for them. And we see that they're doing things that are inimical to the development of that company and the country. Why can't we prosecute them for them to go to jail, at least to deter future appointees from playing the fool?
You're spot on. And in fact, it's one of the things I felt most strongly about. And not just me, I think majority of Ghanaians, this was a very special election. This was not just an election about, to me, it wasn't even really so much about NDC. This was an election about Ghanaians rising and saying enough is enough. We're not just voting, and it was a resounding victory. And it was a mandate to say that we don't just want a change in government, we want a change in our political system which is dysfunctional and which is not serving our needs. And it's a clarion call to the elites that something has to give, because we have the demographics, we have a booming youth population who are no longer going to settle for business as usual. Right? And so there needs to be a different spirit of accountability. We need prosecutions. We need prosecutions because some of the things that have gone on, sometimes we sit back and think of these scandals and we don't understand the implications of them.
The nicest thing I've heard in the last 6 months is ORAL. Operation Recover All Loot.
Absolutely.
Because if we can recover the loot from anybody who has plundered the national purse, it's going to send a signal.
Yes.
To those in government now and those to come.
Yes.
That if you do this, this awaits you.
Absolutely.
How much faith do you have in that?
I'm cautiously optimistic. And I'm cautiously optimistic because there is very real anger across the country. And we want to see real change. We want to see accountability. The youth want to see accountability. Right? And we have a moral responsibility to do so. Because how do we raise our children and tell our children, act right, do well, learn hard, be responsible, espouse the right values, and they watch people in positions of power do the complete opposite and get away with it?
And then when they complain about it, somebody says, oh, you're complaining because you're poor and jealous. When I hear that, it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Because you know full well what somebody earns in a certain key position. But within a period of 3 to 4 years, you see the properties they have acquired, and you know very well it's because of political patronage and daylight robbery.
Yes.
And if you speak about it, people say, oh, it's because you were jealous. And because of that, some people will not speak. And if you speak about it, you'll be attacked like you were attacked. And because of that, many will not speak. What do you say to those who have the mouths and the brains to power the mouths to speak, who choose to be silent amidst the corruption?
You know, silence, I think it was Elie Wiesel who wrote about to be silent is to be complicit. All right? If we go to the Nazi era, the perpetrators of the crimes were not just the soldiers who held the guns or the people who turned on the gas. It was everyone else in that society who was quiet. That's why someone commented on something I said on Facebook and said, you so-called neutrals. And I responded and I said, I have never claimed to be and I will never be neutral. Because to be neutral when it comes to situations of injustice is to side with the oppressor.
True.
Silence always benefits the oppressor, not the oppressed. Yeah. And so I think we have a moral responsibility. We owe it to our country, we owe it to our children, we owe it to ourselves to speak truth to power, but to do so in a constructive manner. I've been deeply disappointed with our political discourse. It's devoid of intellect.
I love that. Devoid of intellect.
It's devoid of intellect. It's hyper-partisan, it's acrimonious, it's very pedestrian, and it doesn't, you know, iron sharpens iron. I was pleasantly surprised, and I sent him a message yesterday. I really enjoyed Kojo Oppong Nkrumah's submission in Parliament yesterday during the vetting. I enjoyed it because he's in opposition. He could easily do what some of his colleagues do, where you will just get up and just
blow hot air
and oppose it just because the person is not in your party. He didn't do that. Kojo came on and he said, these guys, I endorse them. These are correct, competent people. And then he further said, excuse me, these are challenges. I am prepared. We are prepared to help you. We need you to succeed. We need Ghana to succeed. And I sent him a message. I said, that was very gracious, very thoughtful, and it models to me the sort of relationship we need to have. This Ghana is for all of us.
But not only gracious, it was necessary.
It's necessary.
Because if you look at the recklessness of the last 80 years, anybody would be a darn fool to stand up there and pretend they are on a high horse.
Yeah.
We must come to a place where your parents taught you and all of us humility. To acknowledge that we failed, even though you may not say it so loudly, and that somebody else must take the steering wheel, and we must support them.
Yeah.
On the show, however, we have a video we play, and then we take your reaction to it. So let's go see that.
Regret, particularly as we approach this election, well, there are probably many regrets that I will think of, but I do wish that we've been able to change the way we elect our governments in this country so that people could simply choose a second choice or a third choice on the same ballot, so that parties would spend more time trying to be people's second or third choices, and people would have been looking for things they have in common instead of trying to polarize and divide Canadians against each other. I think in this time, figuring out how to pull together and find common ground remains something that is really important for democracies.
Do you think this should be the way forward for democracies, that you don't just vote for who you like or vote against who you hate, but vote for who you think is the first, and then vote for who is the second and who is the third?
No, forced ranking systems are interesting, but when I think about our democracy, we need to take several steps back first before we even get to the voting system. We often think of democracy and say, okay, every 4 years you come, thumbprint, yay, democracy. That's not democracy, right? That's one element, that's voting. Democracy implies informed citizenry. It implies certain inherent systems of accountability, because a democracy is the will of the people. So if you have a system that actually does not reflect the will of the people and that does not prioritize the will of the people, is that a democracy? What was that? There's a song I'm forgetting. That is that one a boyfriend? You know the song I'm talking about?
Ebony Rain.
Ebony, God bless her soul. May she rest in peace.
Can't give you food when you're hungry.
When you're hungry, is that one a boyfriend?
No.
So a democracy that is not, responding to the needs of the people, a democracy that is, making a mockery of issues, is that one a democracy?
You're a good thinker and a thought leader, and you're strong, and your mind is sharp, and you love your country. If the people ask you one day to run, to lead your country, will you heed their call?
My response to that goes back to what I mentioned to you earlier when I referenced...
Don't give me the politicians'
response. No. This is a very real response. Remember I referenced King David and Saul. And I said that King David would not kill Saul because that was the Lord's anointed. Because it is the Lord who anoints kings. So my response is very simple. It is not the call of the people I will heed to, but the call of the Lord.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sangu Delle, brilliant Ghanaian, brilliant African, brilliant citizen of the world, Chief Executive Officer of CarePoint, which runs 4 tech-forward health centers around Africa. They say it's lonely at the top. Don't believe the people who say that nonsense, for if you're not nice to people, you will always be lonely. But if you are graceful and grateful, you will always be in good company. See you at the top. The bottom is too crowded. My name is Darkwah, Kwasi Kyei Darkwah.